Alright, well, let's get back to regularly scheduled programming, shall we? I realized my hat matched my jersey, so I had to change that because that drives people nuts. I was reading yesterday I think on the hockey news, that that's one of the 10 big faux pas is wearing a hat and a jersey of different hockey teams. To me, the only time that you wear a hat and a jersey that matches when you're going to the game, or just to troll people. That's my Boston motif. That's 2 drinks. I'm just messing with people over the whole drinking game thing. I think it's kind of cool that, internet memes and drinking games and stuff would be about yours truly. Lord knows that my ex would have had a drinking game called The Entire Relationship. All right, so my 3 teams for today, I picked Edmonton, Vancouver, and Philly. What do I start with? Let's start with Philly. I start with Philly because Philly's an interesting team. They make the playoffs. They're way overmatched against Washington. It's obvious from the beginning. They cannot match Washington. Steve Mason allowed a goal from about 850 feet away. And that's what's kind of remembered. But Philly was outmatched the entire series. Still took Washington 6 games because they're the Capitals. And they remembered, we have to lose some games here because we're the Capitals. I think the Capitals lose track of how many games they've lost until they realize they're shaking hands with the other team and they're like, oh, I thought we had another game. Damn it, I can't count to 4. Which might be why they can't win a Stanley Cup. Anyways, but they have one of the greatest management teams in history. Really. Smart management. Remember George McPhee was a revered GM at one point too. And then Alex Semin came in, and Alex Semin's ended more GM careers, I think, than anybody else. Okay, Philly's roster is interesting to me because it doesn't really change a whole lot. You've still got Schenn, Giroux, and Simmons. Raffle, Couturier, Voracek. That's your top 6. And you can interchange guys and move them around, but that's your top 6. Lawton, I've got his third line, even though you could say Van de Velde would play ahead. No, Lawton, they want to develop him into something more with Bellemare and Dale Weiss. And they've paid money to Weiss, so Weiss is going to get at least third line treatment from the beginning. The problem is he has Matt Reed behind him, and Reed could steal that third line position. They added Boyd Gordon. Boyd Gordon came in to be a 4th line center, and Van de Velde's on the 4th line. Where it gets interesting is, does Konechny stay up and play 9 games? Does he bump somebody out of the lineup to play 9 games? It's a tough call because with those 12 that I just gave you, they're kind of entrenched NHLers. Van de Velde's arguable, but Konechny can't take the left wing spot from Van de Velde. Can one of those wingers switch spots? Maybe. Do you mess around with your entire lineup just to get Konechny in there for 9 games? It depends how good he is. And then the other spare part is Nick Cousins, who has a reputation for being pest-like and has had that reputation since before he debuted in the NHL. His reputation's actually been pretty negative. It's an interesting forward group. But where I'm really interested in Phillies on the blue line, where you got Ghost of Spear and Streit are their top 2. And Streit, I like him, but he's getting long in the tooth, and they're going to have to bring up his replacement quickly. Del Zotto is one of my favorite defensemen. Don't shoot me for saying it, but I like Del Zotto a lot. I have since he was a Rangers rookie. Just something in his game, something natural and fluid in his motion, something about his confidence with the puck that I know has left him at times. And he got demoted to the AHL and he had a horrible season. I never once thought, well, that's it for Del Zotto. He's a guy that if he was traded to one of my teams, especially Boston right now, please, I would be very happy to see him in a jersey for Boston, Dallas, or Vancouver. Dallas doesn't need him. Vancouver would be very grateful to have him, and Boston would be jubilant to have somebody who can move the puck right now. So Del Zotto's number 3, and Radko Gudas is number 4 because you don't pay him the money they're paying him right now to be a number 6 guy. So he's going to play top 4 minutes on that opening night. Remember, this is opening night roster. And then for 5-6, I've got Provorov in the lineup with Nick Schultz. Provorov, though, he could start top 2. For that first game of the year, for Philly fans, get them excited. You got Ghost, who's, all Calder in their eyes from last year, and if you can put Provorov up there with him, tempting. And then the extras, Andy McDonald and Brendan Manning. McDonald, one of the most overpaid free agents from a few years ago, but he's a good defenseman. He's a good mobile defenseman. He's not as bad as his contract makes him out to be. It's one of those things where a guy gets paid way too much money, and it negatively influences how people see him. And then in goal, Neuwirth and Mason are going to share the net. And I think Mason will probably start the season as the starter because Steve Mason has a larger body of work to call on than Neuwirth, somewhat. Although Michael Neuwirth is one of those guys that reminds me of Tugnut in that he doesn't complain. He moves around a lot. And he's underrated everywhere he goes. And yet, he comes in every season with that same focus, whether it's Washington, whether it's the Islanders, Buffalo, and now Philly. And he's been very consistent all the way across. And, he's had some speed bumps, but I like Neuwirth a lot. I mean, if Miller went as a free agent next year and Benning could bring in Neuwirth to play with Markstrom, I would be overjoyed. And if you told me 5 years ago you're going to be overjoyed to have two Euros as your goalies, I would have said, whatever drugs you're smoking, you need to stop. They're bad. Philly is going to be a middle-of-the-road team, and opening nights... See, compared to the three teams I did yesterday, opening night for Philly is going to be pretty middle-of-the-road, run-of-the-mill. Unless Konechny plays and Provorov plays a lot, but I can't see it. I can't see Hextall rushing Konechny especially. Provorov should be ready. He was a high draft pick. He should be ready. And if Provorov is as good as he is billed, Philly's defense is going to be good for a long time. So even if one of Provorov, Sanheimer, or Morin is a flop, it's fine because as long as the other two are good, you're good. Morin I don't have in the lineup just because I can't see him knocking Manning or McDonald out of those extra spots. But man, there's a lot of defense to like in Philly this year. So yeah, if you're a Flyers fan, I think this year's probably going to be playoff bubble. I want to say more, but it's probably going to be playoff bubble right now. But if a Konechny comes up and plays really well first as a Bruins fan, I will cry because we could have had him and we didn't. And thanks, Don Sweeney. Thanks a lot. It's not about the guys that lost and drafted either. They could be good players. It's about what you passed on. It's like saying, man, I've got a pretty nice Cavalier. I drive a pretty nice Cavalier. Could have had the Corvette, but happy with the Cavalier. No, nobody ever says that. Nobody ever says, I got a decent four-door sedan. Could have had a Lamborghini, but I went sensible and I went with the four-door sedan. Extra seatbelts. No. You don't do that with star players in hockey either. So yeah, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on Philly, and this isn't like predictions of the year. This is just opening night roster. This is what I see. This is where I think they're going to be. I could be completely wrong, but Philly seems pretty set in stone. And I think they potentially could surprise people. A lot's going to rest on Voracek. He needs to, prove that the 81-point season wasn't a fluke. And, the first half he was on a 100-point pace, and I remember thinking at the time he can't keep that up, and he didn't. And Claude Giroux, what's happened to the guy? He, a few years ago, he's beaking off at the Penguins bench, and he got in the Penguins' heads, and they knock out Pittsburgh. And I was a huge Claude Giroux fan during that series. And I don't like the Flyers, but just the fact that Giroux was so cocky, but without crossing a line and taking a bunch of stupid penalties and without causing a whole bunch of fights, he got into Pittsburgh's heads and he stayed there the whole series. And I haven't seen a lot of that Claude Giroux since then. So it'll be interesting to see if that Claude Giroux can come back. Because that Claude Giroux playing with Wayne Simmons and potentially Braden Shen on the left side or Michael Raffle, it doesn't really matter who's on the left side with Simmons and Giroux. Just don't be stupid and don't go offside and just watch the Magic if they're both on. Or Giroux and Voracek. You know, I mean that's a pretty good power play combination right there. But I had Giroux pegged as a 100-point a season guy, as potential Hart Trophy nominee, not a winner but a nominee. And he's still young, so it could still happen. Yeah, opening night probably not going to be fantastic in Philly, but steady playoff bubble team.